trans people.
Wait, did you see the rest of that quote?
I watched the video, but yeah, I watched what's the rest of the quote?
Did you hear me say that marginal differences between each candidacy, like marginal differences between two parties, leads to drastically different outcomes for marginalized populations? Having said that, however, from the eye of like a voter, they don't make that distinction at all, especially if they are coming at it from a privileged position. If it doesn't like attack, if it doesn't harm them at all, and not only
there's not
that,
a marginal. So you're you're kind of conflating two things. When you say there's a marginal difference between the two parties.
You gotta stay focused on goals, don't ever switch up. Keep applying pressure while these other artists hiccup. Drift up from the socks to the cloth that's on my head top. Trying to stay close to my people like I'm the red body. Think that I'm Jedi mind tricking. It's just me. Is it hard for y'all to understand the world just to love what he?
So there's this weird ass rift going on on the left. Democrats, liberal Democrats and progressives are pretty much fighting constantly because progressives have had enough of incrementalism, BS policies, talking about how they're going to do certain things like Medicare for all, but as soon as they get elected, they completely forget about it, not forcing the vote, et cetera, et cetera. When we've gotten to a point where they either really don't pay attention or don't know, or they don't, or they're just really, really scared. You know, and I really think that's what it is. I think this is all coming from a place of fear. I'm a progressive. As a progressive, we believe in radical change now. Actually, let's real quick. The difference between a liberal and a progressive is pretty simple. Liberals support civil rights, civil liberties, individual rights, government involved in regulating the economy, providing social programs, things like that. LGBTQ rights, reproductive rights, voting rights, protections like that. Progressives, we're a lot more radical. Usually more left-leaning than the type of liberal that you would typically see on MSNBC or CNN. Pushes for larger, faster, more structural change. Medicare for all, tuition-free college, strong corporate regulation, higher wealth taxes, radical climate change, things like that. Liberals just are okay. They want to see change, and I think they will be okay with seeing progressive change, but they really are okay with incrementalism. And therein lies our ultimate problem. So, ultimately, Hassan has gotten into this debate with Adam Mockler. Adam Mockler is a young liberal who works, in my opinion, specifically with the Democratic Party as a Democratic Party influencer, which is ultimately fine. Do your thing, get as many people to come to the left as humanly possible. I'm with that, but at the same time, stop sweating progressives because we don't want to do what y'all want to do. We want real radical change, and I think Hassan, he defends it eloquently. He defends it in the best way possible. Because I personally, listening to this debate was hard. It's really hard. It's hard for me to listen to liberals. I really don't like them, but nonetheless.
Yeah, those are my two main points.
I mean, I guess I want to ask you, do you think it would be meaningfully easier to build this working class socialist based movement in a liberal society or an illiberal society?
Oh, historically speaking, most likely.
Adam immediately goes into the lesser of two evils argument, which is ultimately every progressive's problem.
An illiberal society, at least historically speaking, socialist and communist movements have have unfortunately only been
We're tired of it.
successful when material conditions have worsened. I don't want that to happen though, because I don't want to live through that, and I don't think that is like an appropriate thing to move towards. I don't think that that's good for people. I think it's very violent and very deadly. I don't want the material conditions to deteriorate. But if you're asking me, like, honestly, from a historical perspective, no, it
I'm
absolutely
basically
is.
asking. I'm basically just asking if we get to a 2028 and like, I guess we can get into the hypothetical of Newsom versus Vance, but it's not even about that. They're kind of just stand-ins. I don't even want to concede who our nominee is going to be 2 years ahead, but I think there would be a meaningful difference in building a pro-labor movement under a JD Vance presidency, which would be much, much harder, versus a Gavin Newsom presidency. I mean, JD Vance's entire career has been trying to step on top of workers. He wants to.
I agree.
He endorsed Project 2025, which literally wants to bring child labor laws back to 1938. He's fundamentally illiberal and doesn't want to let you organize. I mean, like, a lack of organization is part of not living in a liberal society, right? They will squash that. They will communists. They will kill socialists. That's what they did in other fascist societies. They killed socialists and communists. Meanwhile, Gavin Newsom, however insufficient you may think he is, and this is not an endorsement of Gavin Newsom, I'm just trying to illustrate my points of, the different realities we could enter. However insufficient you think Gavin Newsom is, he would allow for a really strong labor movement. He would allow for you guys to at least, organize, and he would probably communicate with you guys.
First of all, I don't even think you guys. I think you're a part of this as well. You're not against like organizing a labor movement, right? But
no, I'm
also,
not against that.
yeah. Also, can you crank up your volume a little bit on your end? Because I maxed it out, but people still are having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, my bad. A lot of calls.
No, it's all good. As far as like what's better rooms for organizing, it's not even a necessary.
So my ultimate issue with the lesser of two evils argument is how long are we going to deal with that? That's been the argument for the past 2-3 decades. How long are we going to continue to do that and allow these Democrats who ultimately just want to be politicians who get a job and a big fat paycheck, just go to work go to Congress, go to Capitol Hill because they said a bunch of nice things that they know people wanted to hear. And at this point, the voters don't want to hear that shit anymore. We can see right past it, and at this point, there needs to be consequences, and that looks like it's going to come in the form of people not voting.
Part of this discussion, because I know that
it is.
No. The reason why I'm saying it's not a necessary part of this discussion is because, given the option between Gavin Newsom and JD Vance, I'm not saying that Gavin Newsom is going to be a situation than JD Vance. I understand and agree with, in theory, the harm reduction narratives. My argument is always around doing away with harm reduction narratives, because the harm reduction narrative has led to two spectacular failures thus far, both in 2016 and also in 2020. And as far as like playing hardball with Democrats who don't want to listen, who still want to hold on and maintain this like harm reduction narrative, who still say that they want to appeal to this like mythical moderate voter, who's outside of who isn't a normal Democratic Party voter, like these guys that they want to turn to the Democratic Party. I'm willing to play hardball with them and say, like, look, I'll hold my vote back. But the reality of the matter is, if you're asking me sincerely, like, do you think that Gavin Newsom is going to be better than JD Vance? Of course. I mean, this is not something just like Kamala Harris is objectively going to be better than Donald Trump. The miscommunication around this comes in large part due to me openly saying, like, it's out of my hands at that point, because that was the second part that I mentioned. It's openly out of my hands at that point, and there's no way for me to overcome the way that the party is communicating what they want to do, and the fact that a lot of people hear that and immediately go, "Oh, this guy, he wants the Republicans to win." I don't.
Yeah, I don't think you want the Republicans to win. I don't think that at all. And here's where we agree on, actually. So
That's a great point. there's nothing that we can do. You can have the biggest platform in the world and they still don't want to come to you and talk to you about how you can help them get more votes, get more younger votes, get more of their base to turn out and show up and vote for them. What else do you want him to do other than use the only power that he has left to use? And that's to withhold his vote or third party. All of this stems from this clip.
I know. An iron fist and the veto pen is going to magically be. No, you're.
Do you vote for J.D. Vance or Gavin Newsom?
Well, I'd have to vote for Gavin Newsom.
Me
of course,
too.
100%.
I wouldn't blink. What about you, Hassan?
I'd probably vote third party.
You would?
Oh yeah. I mean, at that point, it doesn't even matter. Like, because my policy on this is the same as like my refusal to endorse Kamala Harris. The reason why I did not endorse Kamala Harris was because she did things that were not only unproductive, but also unconscionable. And I still stand on that. I still talk about it all the time because people constantly bring it up. They're like, you didn't sufficiently like promote Kamala Harris. You're the reason why she lost. And I'm like, I am incapable.
Yeah, my cousin got at me because I didn't vote for Kamala. She said the exact same thing. I'm the reason why Trump got elected. Yo, even if that's the case, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't care. How about that? How about that? How about I want them to give us more. I want them to fight harder. I'm not voting for you if you don't want to fight harder. I'd rather if our grandparents and parents and ancestors can fight against racism and state-sanctioned terrorism back when the time when they lynched people, I think we'll be fine. I am sorry for everything that's going on, and it does suck. And as a black man, I'm pretty sure we're going to deal with our fair share of bullshit. But I'd rather deal with that than play this game with Democrats and make them think that they can play with the only power that I have, which is my vote.
There is no singular force in this country that is capable of making or breaking an election. And if that was real, then it is the most idiotic thing not to listen to my demands. But everybody knows that that's not real, right? Mm-hmm. If I had this singular force to be able to make Kamala Harris the president, then Kamala Harris should be coming to me every day and being like, let me do a collab with you, please.
Totally.
Right? That's not the case, of course. And they know it. That's why they didn't do it. But the campaigns are always responsible for whether or not they are able to win the crowds, win the population over, and you know, combat against the couch. Not necessarily even against the Republican Party, but usually you're fighting against the couch, people who just don't go out and vote. And
you especially see that on the local level. On the local level, most of the people in these local districts don't know you're even running, don't even know when the election is, and don't even know if they're registered to vote. That's never been more true. It's true on the federal level, on the presidential level, but it's more true on the local level. You have to have a campaign that mobilizes and activates voters.
And for me, the way I see it is if the Democratic establishment makes this decision one more time, just as they did with Hillary Clinton, just as they did with Kamala Harris, and in some ways, just as they did with Joe Biden as well, which led to Trump too, then they just don't care. And there's not much I can do.
Let me tell you something.
There isn't a progressive that doesn't feel that way. There just isn't a progressive that doesn't feel like that. Nobody wants to deal with these milquetoast Democrats who seem like they just don't care anymore. Like nobody, no, thank you. How about that? No, thank you.
Refusing any sort of arms sales to Israel, and outside of Israel, of course, beholden to corporate interest when it comes to like the real estate lobby, anti-Medicare for all. If he runs as that, okay, there's no amount of advocacy that I can engage in that will make him look better. I can consistently talk about how much worse the the Republican
That's
side
not
is
what you were
going to
asked.
be.
You were asked if you would vote for him. And I'm not even saying you should have said yes in that moment, but you were asked, would you vote for him? And you said at that point, it doesn't even matter. Here's what I'm getting at here.
Yeah.
I think there was a...
And I think here's where I think Adam gets to his point where he ultimately has an issue, and what I think describes, what I think illuminates what most liberals have, or what progressives feel, and what we say.
Consistently talk about how much worse the Republican
That's
side
not
is
what you were
going to
asked.
be.
You were asked if you would vote for him. And I'm not even saying you should have said yes in that moment, but you were asked, would you vote for him? And you said at that point, it doesn't even matter. Here's what I'm getting at here.
Yeah.
I think there was a...
Their problem is that to us, it doesn't really matter. And Hassan is gonna very, very eloquently explain to him what we really do mean.
very solid answer you could have given that didn't outrage the liberals online as much. And I know that a lot of people flung a lot of shit at you on
Personally, I don't give a damn about what the liberals feel anymore.
Twitter. That's
They're the reason why we're in this position.
always what happens. But
Yeah.
I think there was an answer where you could have been like, listen, I refuse to pre-commit to any candidate 2 years
I'm being hyperbolic. They're part of the reason we're in this position.
ahead of a primary. They have to earn my votes, and that's what I want to see. And I totally get you're on stream like 8 hours a day. You're not always going to say everything perfectly. But here's where a lot of liberals online are mad, and here's where we're all kind of talking past each other.
So pretty much in a nutshell, sorry if I cut out so much, but Adam's pretty much saying that what you should have said was you should have been more politically correct in that moment because a lot of people listen to you. You know, they need to earn my vote. Ultimately, what we really do feel.
I see a lot of people online saying all liberals want us to line up behind Gavin Newsom 2 years before a primary. And that's not even the argument that any of us are making. I think where a lot of liberals have problems with the way you speak about the Democratic Party is that you try to minimize the gap between the Democratic and Republican Party. So I can totally grant that you meant to say like, well, you were asked, you were asked, would you vote for J.D. Vance or Gavin Newsom? You said, I'd vote third party. At that point, it doesn't even matter. It feels like you're drawing a false equivalency. And then a few days later, you basically said, Gavin Newsom will only be marginally better than whatever Republican candidate there is. Then you said, Democrats have literally written you out of existence regarding trans people.
Wait,
Then
did you see the rest of that
Democrats-
quote?
I watched the video, but yeah, I watched what's the rest of the quote?
Did you hear me say that marginal differences between each candidacy, like marginal differences between two parties, leads to drastically different outcomes for marginalized populations? Having said that, however, from the eye of like a voter, they don't make that distinction at all, especially if they are from coming at it from a privileged position. If it doesn't like attack, if it doesn't harm them at all. And not only
There's not
that,
a marginal. So you're you're kind of conflating two things. When you say there's a marginal difference between the two parties,
No. It's really, let me break it down for you. Even when two political parties seem very different, if they agree in these marginal areas of huge significance for voters and people's lives, it can feel like a larger impact to that voter who may already be struggling. And don't let them be a single issue voter like Gaza. That's ultimately what Hassan is saying. So for a lot of people who are progressives, we are exhausted with this two-party system that in a lot of ways, yes, is totally different for the person who has to deal with trans issues, but for the person who's been struggling for 40 years as a black person who still hasn't received a bump in minimum wage, bro, I'm sorry, man. Like, nigga, people are exhausted. Like, for real.
I think that signals to people that either way they vote, it doesn't really matter that much. That's how people take that. When you say trans people you said like Democrats would shoot trans people in the back of the head, that signals that Democrats aren't really that different than Republicans, when that's not true. There's not a marginal difference between Democrats and Republicans. There's a very meaningful difference. If it was like Obama versus McCain and you said there's a marginal difference,
I said
fine.
Democrats would, it's exaggeration. Democrats would kill trans people if it meant securing additional electoral votes. And that's not an argument that like Democrats are going to run on a policy of killing trans people. It's a hyperbolic statement about Democrats cutting out trans people, which, as you saw, probably in this last week in the aftermath of the fucking neo-Nazi MAGA dad or.
I ain't gonna talk about the mass shooting. Listen, progressives understand the differences in the similarities between these Republicans and the Democrats. We understand the benefits and the consequences, and the main difference between us and liberals ultimately is that we've made our peace with the fact that they're going to break it regardless, and Democrats are not brave enough or strong enough to want to stop them. Nobody wants to deal with that anymore. You know what I mean? Feel how you want, bro.
That we're like, I'm
and that are because some Democrats went on TV after Kamala lost, and just because some Democrats that are floating polls around on Twitter that are showing Democrats don't care about trans people or have written them out of existence. Like the difference between Democrats and Republicans on trans people is not marginal. It is not slight. It is very, very meaningful. If you grew up in the state of Indiana, where I grew up, and you tell a counselor that you are having thoughts about, like gender dysphoria or you want to change your name, they have to go tell your parents. But if you go across the state borders in the state of Illinois, someone who you probably think is like a moderate billionaire, J.B. Pritzker, he's turned it into a sanctuary state where you can get
I like JB's policies. Yeah, I'm very aware of this distinction.
Okay, but wait a minute. So J.B. Pritzker, Andy Beshear, even Governor Newsom turned California into a sanctuary state. It is a very progressive state. So can you see how people are bothered when you then go on the stream, and I'm quoting you verbatim, you said Democrats have written you out of existence, Democrats don't give a fuck about you, and then you said later on, the marginalized identities have been left behind by the Democratic Party. You're kind of drawing a false equivalency, and then that brings me back to the Jennifer Welch clip. I'm trying to give you the strongest liberal argument here as to why people are mad. It's not
all that shit is true. All that shit is true.
Identities have been left behind by the Democratic Party. Don't give a fuck about you. I'm quoting you verbatim. You said Democrats have written you out of existence. Democrats don't give a fuck about you. And then you said later on, the marginalized identities have been left behind by the Democratic Party.
Which Democrats were rushing to get onto YouTube and speak to independent journalists or commentators or political commentators like Hassan? It wasn't until recently when Donald Trump broke the back of establishment media that they felt the need to even come over here. And even then, they're creating these damn safe spaces like Brian Tyler Cohen and Adam Mockler so that they can have softball interviews, like the one Adam did with Gavin most recently, which we will get into. Like, get the fuck out of here.
You're kind of drawing a false equivalency, and then that brings me back to the Jennifer Welch clip. I'm trying to give you the strongest liberal argument here as to why people are mad. It's not because
and by the way, I've heard this argument.
I really wish Hassan would just say, "Who gives a f that people are mad, bro? Like, organize, vote. Don't like." I'm over here building my bus to Freedom Land. You build your bus to Freedom Land. Don't worry about what I'm doing. If people really care about what Hassan have to say, watch the live stream. If you watch the live stream, you would know this is not. He's so much more nuanced than that.
Used to make this argument myself.
Yeah, but you said at that point it doesn't even matter, and that kind of feeds into the broader apathy that you seem to be pushing towards. So there is a meaningful difference between Democrats and Republicans on trans issues, right? If you grew up in a Democrat or a Republican state, there's a meaningful difference between your quality of life. Can you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
So a meaningful difference. There's a big difference. Okay, so
there is a meaningful difference between living in a Democratic state, hopefully one that isn't captured by Republican state legislatures that will then, even under Democratic leadership within the White House, take advantage of the state legislature apparatus to still undermine trans existence, and then
look at Adam's face. He had no clue that Hassan thought about all this already.
Take that all the way up the courts of the Supreme Court. There's a meaningful distinction between having a liberal Supreme Court majority versus a Republican Supreme Court majority, a super majority even. These are all things that I fully understand and fully agree to and don't want to happen. When I talk...
For instance, when Obama passes the Affordable Care Act, and Republican state legislatures do not want to enact the Affordable Care Act. So they have this warped up view about what Obama did with the ACA, and the entire time the Republican legislature torpedoed the entire bill and the help that could have went to their own constituents.
Talk about the Democratic Party's lack of interest in like actively fighting back and counter messaging against the Republican misinformation around trans people. What I'm talking about is Democrats running from a place of fear. What I want the Democrats to do is to, one, not compromise at all when it comes to putting forth a counter messaging operation to go back and fight back against the Republican Party when it comes to trans issues. But also, this isn't even just about trans people either. This goes back to even undocumented migrants and migrants in general, like Haitians eating cats and dogs, all the endless amounts of attacks, and the notion that like undocumented migrants constitute a national security threat, the way that the Republicans present it. It's pure hysteria. Something that I've told Democrats over and over again, urged Democrats over and over again, even when Joe Biden was president early on, down to the DNC, where I talked to them directly and told them to address over and over again, with the hopes that they would, at the very least, push back against this, so we wouldn't have seemingly a more, like a bigger mandate, a bigger popular mandate for Donald Trump on issues such as that. I think every moment that the Democrats waste, not on the offensive, on affirmative policies and affirmative policy vision that is easily definable, is a moment where the conversation revolves around culture war issues, specifically attacking trans people, and it ends up harming trans people that way. There is a big difference between a blue state and a red one in terms of trans existence. To deny that would be silly. I don't deny that at all.
Good. What about between like a new...
So there's Hassan painfully explaining it 1,000,000 times over to this kid, because liberals can't understand and get it through their brain. We just want more. And that we understand. Most people who are liberal don't really pay attention to what's going on in politics. They really, really don't. They're going through their day to day. They're not really. Progressives are more people who are following politics from nonstop. We never stop following it. We understand. We know what's going on in August. We know what's going on in May. We know what's going on in January. We know what bills are coming down. We know what ballot measures are in the state. Liberals are people who when they think about politics, they just want everything to be okay. Progressives understand that if you don't fight for certain rights, that you are doomed to lose them, because there is a party, the Republican Party, which is actively fighting to take away people's rights. And it's not that we want people to vote Republican or that we're going to help the Republicans. It's in fact the opposite. We are ferociously trying to get people to fight harder and tell them, no, we're not going to give you our vote if you give us some bullshit. Give us more. You say you want us to vote for you, fine, or do you want to lose? What did you actually come here to Congress for? Did you come here to mess around and play around my vote, or did you come here to actually win? So give us the things that we need to vote for you. An article on Common Dreams talks about what really is going on with Democrats and why they're losing to progressives. Every single participant in a New York Times focus group preferred progressive candidates over the moderate ones. Report by a... Oh, wait. Oh, bro. Your boy can't see that. Report by Julia Connolly. Democratic Party needs to embrace the voice that resonates with the people, said one participant. I mean, look, the voters will tell you. We don't have to really say much. Voters will tell you better than we can. New York Times America in Focus series has assembled dozens of focus groups in recent years, often asking supporters of President Donald Trump how they feel about the domestic and foreign policy 1 year into his second term. But political observers suggested Tuesday that the newspaper's latest focus group should capture the attention of the Democratic leaders who have been condemned for capitulating to the president and refusing to embrace and learn from the victories of progressive leaders like New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. A number of respondents expressed ire over the decision by 8 members of the Senate Democratic Caucus to vote with Republicans last November to end the record-breaking government shutdown without securing any concessions to protecting health care for millions of Americans who rely on Affordable Care Act subsidies. Literally, made people wait to get their food stamps just so that you can not get anything for health care. Completely pointless. Democrats are good at one thing, making people hate them. The response from participants tracks 100% with what I've seen on the streets from No Kings protests and the resistance against ICE, said commentator Hassan Piker. Democratic leaders, he added, are oblivious to the anger felt by voters. They are speaking to an echo chamber of consultants who tell them what they want to hear. Yep, because when you talk to voters, we don't say nothing like this. Let's see, some of what voters have called them. Spineless was one word a participant had for the Democratic Party when asked to describe it. Another said the party appears to be paralyzed, while a 46-year-old Latina woman from Nevada said Democrats in Congress are sellouts and suckers. Terrell, a 68-year-old retired Indiana resident, agreed that the party and leadership has sold out. I just feel we were never being governed, said Terrell. We were being looted. The Democratic Party lined their pockets and created this mess. All Hassan's tried to do, is say in so many clear terms, this is what we feel, this is what most of the voters feel. And the last thing I got is Hassan actually explaining where he stands with Republicans.
Makes this clear, right? I hope this helps people understand. Like, I have a much more reasonable position than people understand. And as a matter of fact, because I have a much more reasonable position than people understand, a lot of people on my side, on my left flank, will consistently yell at me and they'll say, you're too naive. You're too stupid. You don't treat people that are working with the establishment wing of the party as like enemies. Okay, I'm somewhere in between. I'm not anywhere near as conciliatory to the establishment Democrats as Bernie Sanders is, because I still understand that. But I still understand that you have to work with Democrats as a whole and caucus with the entire party to get some sort of comprehensive agenda across. Okay, Brian Tyler Cohen says, "What's to stop you from building a program to that supports creators in the ecosystem? You love about chorus, which includes leftist liberals and apolitical creators. No time to be a part of the solution, just want to endlessly complain." To which, I mean, that was the part that I think was like the most ridiculous. So I did respond to that. I said, I work with a program. As a matter of fact, I work with multiple programs. I work with labor unions and anyone that will advance the interests of the working class, whether it be community organizing, mutual aid, even electing representatives that advance the agenda. And that's because, like, for me, it's not a...
Okay, so let me ultimately say this and give you my thoughts. Get off his meat. You know what I'm saying? Get off the man's meat. You know, at the end of the day, the man has stood on the same progressive principles and values that he's stood on since he's gotten here. And liberals are new to this space. Hassan's a huge platform, and it's understandable that people would get upset when he says certain things, but do your homework, watch the damn live stream, learn for your damn self, because at the end of the day, there's a real existential threat coming. And 9 times out of 10, because he pays attention to it 24 hours a day, he's telling you this for a reason. And this is what the progressive argument is. So this video's long enough. I'm hoping I'll be able to cut it down. May the good Lord bless your bones, as the old folks used to say. Peace and love, y'all.
Strutting down
Peace
this
and
muddy road, made more friends than foes. Did so many shows, said yes to a lot of them. Few weeks later, I don't hear peep out of them. You gotta stay focused on goals, don't ever switch up. Keep applying pressure while these other artists hiccup. Drift up from the socks to the cloth.